That's the big question there, Shefty just talked about. And Dan, let's talk about Cowboys-Niners Sunday night. What are you watching for?
Can the Cowboys stop the run? San Francisco can still run the football, even though they're dealing with some injuries. Last 3 times these teams have played, the Cowboys have lost all 3, and they've given up over 450 yards rushing. Can this defense, coming off of a bye against a reeling offense that is devastated by injuries, stop the run?
So far, they haven't, and they haven't at record numbers. The Cowboys can't stop the run. They can't run the ball. And Jerry Jones, in his weekly radio interview, knows exactly who to blame. It's the coach's fault. This was the owner and the general manager on the radio Tuesday talking about his coaching staff and Mike McCarthy.
The types of things that we all think we should be looking at is, well, we're designing bad plays or we're designing bad concepts. The facts are that there's some of that, but there's also some of execution. There's some of the talent. I like our talent.
I talk to Jerry all the time. You know, we've had time to go through the self-scout, so I can't really. I didn't see the comments specifically, so but I don't think we have bad concepts in bad place. But I'll go back and check. We're not where we want to be. I mean, that's clearly, and that ultimately is my responsibility, and I'm fully aware of that. But, you know, we are very diligent.
Man, I very seldom feel bad for people who have jobs that everyone else in the world would dream of having and make lots of money, but I actually felt bad for Mike McCarthy in that moment where he's got to explain, because the person who was criticizing him is his boss, is the one who pays his salary and all that. So he can't say what he really wants to say. So he has to say, well, I don't think I'm calling bad plays. I don't think we're designing a bad offense. I guess I'll go back and look. Pretty uncomfortable moment there, Dan. What is your big picture take?
I've never heard a front office member talk about an employed coach that way. An owner, a general manager, talk about a coach that is still an employee in that capacity. To undermine, to undercut, to belittle that head coach who you hired, who's won a Super Bowl, you undermine his football intelligence, his ability and his football acumen to design plays. I've never, in 20-plus years being around the league, heard that happen before.
Can I say this really quick, though?
Go.
Does Jerry Jones understand that it's okay to have a positive environment for your coaching staff and your players?
Yeah.
Like, that's okay, Jerry Jones. It's okay for things to move in a positive direction when it comes to your organization. Because guess what? Players and coaches, they thrive a little bit better when those circumstances arise to them or are presented to them, I should say, Grady.
This is a very confusing situation because Jerry Jones has stuck by a lot of coaches over the years, Jason Garrett and many others, at times when we speculated on whether or not they would get fired. They haven't done any high-level winning in a very long time, so it's not like this is new either. So you say to yourself, what is it that's new? What is different? Why is it that he's saying these things now when he generally hasn't? It's his expectations, right? He is genuinely surprised that what we all saw coming is what's actually happening.
100% accurate. And that's why in the offseason it was said, this team is set up to fail because the owner and the general manager expects a Super Bowl run. The talent doesn't supply that or support that. The talent is not a Super Bowl run talent. It's the least talented football team they have had since Dak Prescott became the starting quarterback. That's how I feel about their talent.
And that's the tough thing about it, because when you're the owner and the general manager, as ownership, you of course have the expectation to win when you're paying your quarterback $60 million a year. But as a general manager, you haven't built the team to do so. But as the owner, how do you call yourself out for not building a team? So the comments we're hearing when you're talking about offensive scheme, when you're talking about we couldn't figure out how to use a Derrick Henry, you're saying my coaches aren't smart enough to figure that part out.
Just think about Mike McCarthy's week right now.
Of course.
You go into the bye week after a win on the road against Pittsburgh in dramatic fashion.
No, they got obliterated by Detroit.
Oh, excuse me. Yes. So you go into that after getting absolutely dump trucked. Your Hall of Fame quarterback has said your routes aren't good on the perimeter, and then the owner and general manager say that you don't design good plays for the offense. How are you supposed to feel good about winning a football game?
Okay, yes, correct. I want to change the question. We've talked about this now for 2 or 3 days since Jerry said it. We all agree. Of course he shouldn't have said it. Of course it's making Mike McCarthy's job harder. Of course it creates the environment that we're all discussing here.
Jerry Jones, Greeny, a couple weeks ago coming on saying there's no offense that sets their quarterback up for failure more than Dallas does. We watched the tape where they would put CD out by himself and say, go run a stop route. So listen, Jerry Jones is right that there are some pass concepts that aren't good. And Troy Aikman's right that the receivers don't launch off the football or run crisp routes. Both of those things are very true. Also, I can design a great run game. If we get whooped at the line, that's not on design.
Yeah.
I can design a great defensive front.
So
if we get whooped at the line,
so then
that's not design.
Then he's not right.
No, there is some truth to it.
But as a general manager, you're just saying if you don't have the talent within the locker room, because coming into the season, we talked about it, 1 through 53. You don't think it's a good roster. Where should they be at this point? Should it be 4 wins instead of 3 wins? So my thing is when you build a team and you go into a season, we can look across all 32 teams. Some of the teams are saying, hey, we're kind of rebuilding. We know it's not going to be a pretty year. The Dallas Cowboys roster spoke to that.
But here's
when the results don't happen, you're like, oh, well, we're not coaching.
J-Max, here's the question to ask. Is the coaching elevating the talent or minimizing the talent? I would say that the coaching offensively minimizes the talent, minimizes it. Now, I don't think that the coaching would make this a 6-0 football team, but I don't believe that the coaching is taking average talent and getting it to perform in an above-average way.
So I want to get to a play really quick, y'all, that highlights a lot of things that we're talking about right now.
Go.
Not having the ability to have Derrick Henry at the running back position. Mike McCarthy not putting players in the best situations to succeed. And also, this is a 3rd and 1 right here versus Pittsburgh. They rush to the line of scrimmage. They're running a man concept versus zone. What I would like for Dallas to do in this situation is have 2 plays called in the huddle. Because if you see man coverage, you run the pass play. If you see zone coverage, you run the football. Also, if you have Derrick Henry, number 22 in the backfield, that also helps for 3rd and 1. But also, what Troy Aikman is talking about, Jalen Tolbert at the top of the screen, he's running like a go route, and I know based on concept, he's supposed to have a corner route.
Sure.
So all those things came up in that one play on 3rd and 1.
Let's have the contrast with this, J-Mac. Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to the coaching, is it elevating or minimizing the talent? Detroit's a really talented offense. Is the coaching elevating that?
Absolutely.
Okay, Minnesota, really talented. Is the coaching elevating it?
Yeah, but
San Francisco.
Yes, absolutely.
Cliff Kingsbury in Washington.
You're also naming teams that have weapons after weapons on the offensive side of the ball.
Washington and Cliff Kingsbury. That's not a very talented football team offensively.
Washington is the exception in the list you just said. But as you're going through,
but they're still getting elevated. Jared Goff's an MVP candidate.
Absolutely.
So that's my thing.
Let me get Shefty in. Or not. Anyway, the point of it.
I think that's a great question. Again, I think what's getting lost is there's all this cowboy noise, and we're talking about the concepts and the offense and the coaching. And the fact of the matter is, they are 3-3.
Yes.
They are 3-3, and they're going to San Francisco on Sunday night to play a game that becomes critically important to both teams because the loser of this game is going to be reeling. Dallas at 3-4 is going to reignite all these conversations we're having right now in the weeks to come. San Francisco's on the ropes with all the injuries that the 49ers now have. Somebody's going to come out of Sunday night in a very important game, in a game we didn't expect to be important in the way that it is, in a very challenged and difficult spot. And if Dallas loses Sunday night, coming out of a bye, to go to 3-4 in a division where the Commanders are better than everybody expected, with the schedule the Cowboys have ahead, Dallas is going to be in trouble. There's going to be a lot of conversation.
Mike McCarthy is the same coach where last year Dak was an MVP candidate and CeeDee Lamb was a top of the league when we talk about receiving. Same offensive coach.
I'll make one quick point before we go, if I may. That sometimes at this point of a season, obviously winning and losing is the objective here. But if you look at teams' point differentials, they frequently tell you a story along the way of how good or bad a team is. The San Francisco 49ers, we're incredibly worried about them, right? That right now they're sitting at 3-4. They have a positive differential. They're plus 22. The Cowboys are 3-3. They're minus 42. That's worse than the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-5. So they have not played.
But
I
they've
know the
gotten
record
blown out
says
twice.
Well, they've gotten blown out 3 times. The Baltimore game they made look much closer at the end with that fourth quarter.
True.
They were non-competitive in all 3 of their losses, and that's the point. Sometimes those things, as the season goes on, are the best indicator of what is to come.
Everyone is speaking out about this for the Dallas Cowboys, and the entire league has been put on notice. The Cowboys have underachieved. They didn't do anything to address some of their issues that had plagued them. And Jerry Jones, he's been making an ass out of himself every single time he's been opening his mouth. So I'll break that down and much more on this episode of Cowboys Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Cowboys Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vrionis, and bear with me because my voice is not where it needs to be right now. A little bit under the weather, but I wanted to bring you guys this video right here because it's interesting. And anytime there's Jerry talk, we're going to be all over it because this guy doesn't have a shortage of things to say. But before we get into the video, I want to let you know that a large percentage of you watching the channel are not subscribed. So go ahead, hit that sub button. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a ton. But yeah, 85% of you who watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So got to get that number down somehow. Hit that sub button. You won't regret it. But let's get straight into it right here. A 3-3 start has the Dallas Cowboys in a tough situation ahead of the November 5th NFL trade deadline. With a couple more wins over the next 2 weeks, the Cowboys could become buyers, adding more talent to an already strong roster. I don't agree that it's a strong roster, but I digress. Moving on here. Yet another loss or two could send Dallas into a spiral that makes them trade deadline sellers. So it's true. The Cowboys right now are in sort of a middle ground where they don't really know where they're going to end up. Are they going to be sellers? Is it smart to be buyers at the deadline? I don't know. I really don't know which direction they should go in. But if that game against Detroit was a measuring stick at all for you fans out there, then the answer is simple. Sell, sell, sell. Try to get assets as opposed to giving up assets in order to address the team. I think the best course of action this year for the Cowboys is to try to acquire draft capital as opposed to trying to give away draft capital and filling in holes with temporary solutions. I just don't think that is the way, and that is not what Jerry has been saying out in the media either. He said he likes his team. He's not going to make any trades. Who knows with this man? It's very confusing. And this is just to give you kind of a preview of what we got going for us on Sunday night against the Niners. Everyone is picking San Francisco to win that contest, and I don't blame them. Even without a lot of their guys, without Brandon Ayuk, without Christian McCaffrey, without maybe George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, they're going to be shorthanded. They're not going to have all of their guys at their disposal, but still, they have a good defense. They've owned the Cowboys in years past. I don't expect this to go well for Dallas unless they get Micah Parsons back and they start to show some flashes of being a team that is going to hustle and be a bunch of dogs out there on the field. We haven't seen that all season long, so I don't know if it's necessarily going to show up at Levi's Stadium against the Niners on Sunday Night Football on the biggest stage. But I hope I'm wrong. I'll never cheer for the Cowboys to lose, whether they're in contention for the first overall pick or whether they're in contention for first place. I will never cheer for them to lose. That I can guarantee you. But I am a realistic Cowboy fan, and I will tell you that I'm not too optimistic about that, about the results of that game heading into Sunday. I just can't see a world in which they beat the Niners at home. But hey, I've been wrong before. I've been wrong many times. There's a reason. There's a reason why I'm doing this and not managing a front office somewhere. So hey, if I'm wrong, I'll gladly eat it and I will wear it to the face. No doubt about that. This makes Sunday's game against the Niners a pivotal matchup against a similarly desperate 3-4 San Francisco team. But if we know the Cowboys like we think we do, a loss could even make them more aggressive ahead of the deadline, making sure this team doesn't fall short of the postseason. Now, I don't agree with either, because if they were going to get more aggressive, it would have happened already, because they've gotten blown out 3 times at home here. Okay, 2 times at home, and one of them was a blowout until they actually decided to step up and play. So if they did want to make some changes and be aggressive, I feel like they would have been made right now. We've already seen a slew of trades around the National Football League. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins get traded just this morning. We saw Davante Adams get traded to the New York Jets just a couple of days ago. So look, there's been some moves, and teams that are in desperate situations have been making these moves. I wouldn't say the Chiefs are in a desperate situation, but they're dealing with a lot of injuries, and instead of sacrificing their undefeated record, they are getting ahead of the problem, and they are addressing the issues that are plaguing their roster right now, because they are not a perfect football team. They aren't. And then you look at the New York Jets. That's a desperation move. That was a team that was 2-4 that needed some help. I don't know if that was necessarily the help that they needed, but Aaron Rodgers wanted it, and he got Davante Adams. And then they lost on Sunday Night Football against a Monday Night Football. Sorry. No, it was Sunday Night Football. I'm really cloudy right now. I'm really under the weather, so again, I apologize. But yeah, they get Davante Adams on a trade, and then they lose the game right after. So they're 2-5 right now. That looks like a bit of an idiot move. Them hitting the panic button, dealing a 3rd-round pick for a guy who's making almost $30 million. That doesn't seem very smart to me by Joe Douglas and the New York Jets front office. And I don't know if the Cowboys are in position right now to be one piece away. I don't think they're one piece away if they go out and acquire a wide receiver or a running back or anybody for that matter. There are a lot of notable holes on this roster that need to be filled through the draft, through free agency, and I just don't think there's a quick snap of the finger solution for this Cowboys squad. I want them to make the playoffs. I really do. But I don't know if it is realistic with this current core of players that they have and with all the injuries that they're dealing with too. This feels like more of a long-term plan that they got going on here. And now I'm not going to pat Jerry on the back because he's been lying to us all along. He said that they're all in. He's trying to gaslight the fan base, and I hate that. I've seen right through it the entire time. This team is not good enough to win a Super Bowl. You could argue that it wasn't good enough last year, but they had 12 wins in the regular season, and they were undefeated at home. So they were well positioned to make an NFC Championship game last year, and then all hands are on deck. Nothing is off the table there. So they had an opportunity. They fell flat on their faces. They decided, okay, we're going to keep Dak, we're going to keep CD, and then everything else is just going to be fillers, and we're not going to do much to address the holes that are obviously plaguing this roster right now. So Jerry has been gaslighting the fan base. I'm not going to give him a pat on the back, but there is a clear plan in place here, and he's just not divulging it to the fan base. They are not going to make moves this year. They are not going to make moves to address the current roster. Maybe they'll make moves to address the roster down the line and add some draft picks to address some of the holes on this roster maybe in the next 2 or 3 years. But as for this season, I just don't think it's realistic for the Cowboys to make any sort of move like that. And despite the optics of the Cowboys' losses this season, they are still in play for the division and should start getting back key injured players soon. Micah Parsons, Brandon Cooks, Deron Bland all appear to be on the cusp of returning, with DeMarcus Lawrence and Marshawn Nealon expected to return later. Even with those reinforcements, the Cowboys have significant holes on the roster, which is what I've been saying, namely at the running back and defensive tackle spots. If the Cowboys actually are all in and have hopes for a late season surge into the playoffs, they'll need to address what they can on the trade market. And that's the thing. I don't think they're all in. I don't. And I saw right through it because there were no moves made in the offseason. And Jerry has been lying to us, saying that they are all in, and they're clearly not here. So I don't know, like, what was a move that they could have made? Maybe Alvin Kamara, but that ship has sailed because he just signed a 2-year extension with the New Orleans Saints. So I understand the pressing needs here that the Cowboys have, at least for this season. But I don't think it's smart to deal away draft capital for a guy like Alvin Kamara, for example, who is not going to make that big of a difference on your roster. He'll help. He'll definitely be better than what Rico Dowdle has given you. But apart from that, is he going to make your defense better? No. Is he going to make your offensive line better? Also, no. He needs those things to be successful. And the Cowboys have a big area of weakness in that department as well. So, I don't know. There are some options that the Cowboys can go look at for this season that are sort of cheaper options, and I touched on them. Khalil Herbert was one of them, right? That the running back from the Chicago Bears kind of got lost in the shuffle there. But there are some names to look out for that could help the Cowboys and give them some relief. But then you're dealing away picks for 1-year contracts for guys that are not necessarily a part of your long-term solution. So they are in a tough spot right now. They really are. And there's no clear direction that they are headed in. And that, to me, is a big worry sign. Are they going to beat the San Francisco 49ers? I don't know. Maybe. They have a chance because the Niners are banged up. If the Niners were fully healthy, I'd say hell no. Hell no. But they're not. And they're dealing with a ton of injuries right now, as are the Cowboys. But still, like, if you were ever going to beat the Niners in the past 5 years, this is probably your best chance to do it. So if they win, yeah, I'll be impressed. I'll be happy. But I need to see a long, sustained run of games here where they show consistency in order for me to buy back into this team. I've seen too many lopsided defeats, and I've seen too many close victories from them this year in order to definitively say that they can compete for a title this year. They are so far away from a Super Bowl that not many moves can really save them right now. But let me know in the comments down below. Do you think the Cowboys should be aggressive as buyers, or should they be selling? Should they be trying to acquire draft picks ahead of this offseason? Let me know in the comments down below. But again, make sure to hit that sub button because we're close to my goal of 2,000 subscribers, and it'd mean the world if you could get me there before Sunday Night Football, the monumental clash between two arch rivals. Should be a lot of fun, but I'll see you tomorrow, and go Cowboys.
Make it or break it in Dallas. Well, make it or break it in Santa Clara, California, when the Cowboys travel to Levi Stadium once again to play the San Francisco 49ers. A team that has haunted Dak Prescott and the Cowboys for years now, dating all the way back to 2021. So let's talk about this matchup and answer the biggest question of all: do the Cowboys even have a chance? Surprisingly, the Cowboys have played their best football of the season on the road. Granted, the opponents haven't been phenomenal, but they have gotten all 3 of their wins on the road to start the year. Now, facing the 49ers, this is a different beast compared to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the Giants. But it isn't quite the beast that it's been in years past. Injuries on both sides are starting to pile up. For the 49ers, they will be without Christian McCaffrey, much like they have for the entirety of this season already. Kyle Shanahan said he would be surprised if McCaffrey played. With the 49ers having a bye after this game, a lot of these guys could be held out simply because they would have 2 weeks to get healthy and be ready for week 10. At wide receiver, the 49ers are going to be without Brandon Ayuk. He tore his ACL in the Chiefs game and will miss the remainder of the season. And while Ayuk hadn't had the best season up to this point, that is a huge, huge loss for this team. Wide receiver Juwan Jennings is questionable with a hip injury. He missed last week's game. And now without Brandon Ayuk, it's going to be important if he does or doesn't go. When Juwan Jennings was asked to step up a couple of weeks ago, he really balled out. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as the week continues. Like I said, the 49ers have a bye coming up, and if the team's not really sure on his status, they might hold him out. Wide receiver Chris Conley is questionable with an ankle injury. Tight end George Kittle is questionable with a foot. And the 49ers have already ruled out Jake Moody, their kicker, with an ankle injury. Needless to say, this isn't the juggernaut that we've seen in years past where they could just dice you up any way that they wanted to. They would run CMC, they'd throw to Kittle, Ayuk on a slant, Debo on a reverse. That was a scary, scary offense. And it actually just reminded me, Debo missed pretty much all of the Chiefs game with a illness. It was reported that he has pneumonia, and if that's true, then I could see him missing this game as well. That's not something that you just kind of get over and play on Sunday. So that's a guy that we'll have to keep an eye on as well. But overall, that was a scary, scary offense. And with the injuries mounting for this team, it's not quite the same. But it's still the 49ers. They can still beat you. And they're still favored to win this game by 4.5 points on BetUS, our sponsor for today's video. The home team typically gets 3 points because they are the home team, so look at it like a 1.5 point favorite for the 49ers. With BetUS, though, they have much more than just football, basketball, baseball, hockey, tennis, even surfing. I mean, you name it, BetUS has it. But we all really like football around here, and they have NFL futures like the Super Bowl winner, conference winners, division winners, playoff specials, all of those fun future odds. They have you covered. The possibilities really are endless with BetUS. If you sign up today, you'll get a 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next two. So go check out BetUS, where the game begins. For the Cowboys, they aren't the same team either from those playoff losses. Micah Parsons is questionable with an ankle injury, and Jerry Jones said on the radio this morning that Parsons and Bland are likely going to be game time decisions when it comes down to it. We thought there was a possibility that Bland would go before the bye week, and him being a game time decision kind of makes me think there was a little bit of a setback with his injury. But both of those guys, we're really going to have to look at, are they practicing on Thursday and Friday? Are they at least limited? Because if they're limited, they have a chance. But if they're not practicing all week, or they're missing Friday, much like Bland did right before the Lions game, then there's a good chance that they miss this game. Other players questionable are Eric Kendricks and Kalen Carson. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on with Kalen Carson. I mean, he was hurt in week 2, and he just hasn't played since. The Cowboys didn't put him on IR. It didn't seem serious at the time. He's been questionable every single week to play, yet he hasn't played. So, kind of need to keep an eye on that. Being a young guy, you would think he would kind of get back quicker, but the fact that Deron Bland is almost back from his injury and Kalen Carson's still struggling to get on the field, that is pretty worrisome. And of course, really quick, the Cowboys still have, Marshawn Nealon, DeMarcus Lawrence, Brandon Cooks, Jordan Phillips, Chuma Edoga. All of those guys are still on injured reserve and will miss this week. Now let's get into my 5 keys to victory. This week, we came up with some unique names for our 5 keys to victory, so let's talk about those. Key number 1, grounded and pounded, which means stop the run, all right? I could make this every single key to this game because, well, the 49ers like to run the ball and the Cowboys do not do a good job of stopping the run. I mean, they had good games against Pittsburgh and New York, but the 49ers run scheme is a completely different animal. The Niners and Brock Purdy, their air attack has struggled against man coverage this year, and we'll talk about that more later in the video, but I would load up with 8 men in the box and play man on the outside. I would sell out completely to stop the run. I am making Purdy and those receivers beat me consistently. If he does, if he smokes you, oh well. Great job, Brock Purdy. We'll go home and say we got beat by a better quarterback. But we can't go home like we have so many times already this year, knowing that this team cannot stop the run. Once again, I am begging the Cowboys to sell out, stop the run, make the quarterback beat you. If they can do that, they have a chance. If they can't do that, it could get ugly pretty quick. Let's go on to key number 2. Your quarterback has to be Dak Dude. Dat Dude.
You get it?
This is a quarterback game, just like I mentioned with Brock Purdy. Dak has to play well. He's had some letdown games against San Francisco, hasn't played particularly well. So far this season, he has turned the football over more than you would like to see from your starting and franchise quarterback. He needs to get in there, be the catalyst for this team playing well, make good decisions, make your receivers better, and win this football game. Key number 3, 7 points is better than 3 points. The Cowboys are one of the worst red zone offenses in football, and you don't need any statistics to tell you that. It's as simple as being better in the red zone. Scoring 7 points is a hell of a lot better than scoring 3 points, something that Dallas has done way too much this year. Cut down on the penalties in the red zone, cut down on the interceptions, the bad decisions, the bad play calling from Mike McCarthy, and this really goes hand in hand with Dak playing well, not turning the ball over, and just overall having a decent day in the red zone and giving your defense a chance. Key number 4, puzzle Purdy. Steve Spagnuolo did a great job against San Francisco last week in disguising his coverages, mixing and matching his looks, and there were times that you could tell Purdy was confused by the Chiefs' defense. Now, the Cowboys don't have that level of players and that level of coaching, but they really need to take into account what the Chiefs were able to do. With Bland hopefully back in the lineup, or at least Kalen Carson, I feel better about the corners on an island, mainly because the 49ers are pretty void of talent on the outside right now. They have no Brandon Ayuk, and they're going to be leaning on a rookie wide receiver in Ricky Pearsall. I mentioned that George Kittle was questionable. I haven't seen anything that would possibly rule him out for this game, but I'm taking my chances against those receivers, and I'm blitzing, I'm dialing up pressure, I'm sending Overshown on a blitz. Throw the kitchen sink at this offense. Force Purdy to read and react to all of the moving pieces you have on defense, while also trusting your corners, and hopefully that's Bland, Diggs, and Carson, to hold up in coverage by themselves. It might get you killed, but I think there's a better chance that it doesn't, and it's how you stop this offense and win the game. For our 5th key, we're going to talk about another offense that has struggled a bit, particularly struggled with their wide receivers in the passing game. Key number 5 is create space in this offense. And when I say it, I mean this for both Mike McCarthy scheming guys open and also for the receivers just beating the man in front of them. This offense has had no space to breathe this year. Every throw is a tight window throw. Literally, Dak leads the league in tight window throws. Mike McCarthy, the wide receivers, they got to find ways to create space. Let Dak hit the easy button. Whatever you got to do, motion guys across, bunch up those wide receivers, use pick plays on short to go situations. Hell, overload one side of the field with drag routes and dig routes, and let CD work on the opposite side by himself. Just create space. This offense needs it so bad, whether that's winning your one-on-one matchups or that's Mike McCarthy making a concerted effort to help his wide receivers. It's been a bad combination of both this year. Those two things are going to go hand in hand. Let this offense breathe just a little bit. So that is our 5 keys to victory. And the question is, can the Cowboys win this game? Is there a chance that the Cowboys win this game? And I will say yes. There's a chance, especially with all of the injuries that the 49ers have. While Dallas has a lot of injuries themselves, they're not facing the Detroit Lions, who were completely healthy, pretty much had nobody on the injury report going into that game. So yes, Dallas could win, cover that 4.5 points, but will they do it? You guys let me know down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching the video. I love you all, and I'll see you back later this week. Bye.
Jerry Jones reveals major Cowboys coaching regret amid Mike McCarthy's uncertain future. As the Dallas Cowboys return to action from their bye in Week 8, fans are wondering just how much longer of a leash Mike McCarthy has left. The Cowboys head coach's seat has grown hotter by the week, especially following Week 6's disastrous 47-9 blowout loss to the Detroit Lions at AT&T Stadium. Even though McCarthy has guided the Cowboys to 3 consecutive 12-win campaigns, the franchise has 0 playoff success to show for it. It's also unlikely that Dallas will keep that trend going, given the team would need to go 9-2 down the stretch to match that performance. With the Cowboys heading in the wrong direction, it's only natural that owner/general manager Jerry Jones would reflect on past regrets. Cowboys news: Jerry Jones regrets firing Wade Phillips. During Tuesday's interview with 105.3 The Fan, Jones revealed to listeners that firing Wade Phillips during the 2010 season was one of his biggest regrets, hat tip Cowboys insider Joseph Hoyt. It stung Jones knowing that Phillips eventually went on to win a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator with the Denver Broncos. Then offensive coordinator Jason Garrett took over as the interim head coach following a 1-7 start under Phillips' guidance. The Cowboys ended up going 5-3 across their final 8 games, resulting in Garrett sticking around behind the bench until the end of the 2019 season. Back on October 15th, Jones told 105.3 The Fan listeners that he won't be making any more in-season coaching changes. The fact that the 82-year-old billionaire openly regrets canning Phillips midway through the 2010 campaign likely solidifies that fact. While some owners are willing to take some risks, it's clear that Jones is fine with sticking with the status quo for the remainder of the season. He's often too proud to admit when he's made a mistake, and firing McCarthy within the next 11 weeks would suggest that he completely fumbled the Cowboy season. At the end of the day, it might be time for Jones to stop living in the past. He was convinced that a washed-up Ezekiel Elliott could still be a number one running back. He clearly regrets a coaching decision from nearly 15 years ago. He's convinced that he's a great general manager just because of the Super Bowls that were won in the 1990s. Instead of pining for the glory days, Jones needs to wake up and focus on how he can make the Cowboys' present and future better. Now that he's firmly in his 80s, time is ticking if he still wants to see another championship run. Whether McCarthy finishes the year in Dallas or not, it's hard to imagine the Lombardi Trophy being in the Cowboys' immediate future. America's team heads into Week 8 with the 13th best Super Bowl 59 odds, plus 3,600, on FanDuel's Sportsbook. And you fans? What do you think about Mike McCarthy's dismissal from Dallas? Leave your opinion in the comments.